Already live. My bad. We're learning the technology.
We are total professionals. We got this.
And I don't see the thing. Just a moment. Bear with us. Here we go. Technology. We got it. Okay.
Okay. We are here and we have names. Perfect.
I think we're ready to go. You've got your little story strategies up there. Names. There. Okay.
This is why I could never be a weather girl.
Right is left. Yeah. Although when I was a dancer, stage left is actually right. So you would think this would work out, but no, it's actually not the same at all. Never mind. Okay. Should we get to what we actually came here to talk about?
Yes, let's talk, shall we?
Yes. How are things in your world?
Things are good. It's crazy. The world is crazy.
It's crazy.
My daughter, who is going absolutely stir crazy being trapped in the house, and it's her senior year, so she's all worried about what's going to get canceled and all that kind of stuff, decided to take our dog for a walk today. And our dog is a 99-pound pit mix who doesn't do walks. She's I go in the backyard, do what I need to do. I come right back into my orthopedic crib-sized mattress and I stare at my family type dog. And so my daughter took her out for a walk. It lasted about 15 minutes. And it only took that long because I had to stop at every driveway because the dog kept going up to the neighbors' cars like she was going to get in because she doesn't understand this.
Just drive me back home.
Yes. So we're adjusting. We're adjusting to the new normal of things. And
I don't like that phrase, the new normal. I don't want this to be normal.
The present normal.
To buy carrots again.
Yes, that's the little thing. Well, yeah. Let's refer to it as that. It's present normal.
The present.
It's not the future normal. It's the present that we've got. So.
All right. Well, the one thing that really isn't being affected, as far as I can tell, is editing. People are still writing stories. They are still looking for editors. So we're still working away here at Evident Inc. And today we wanted to bring our second episode of our story strategy live cast. That's what we'll call it, that instead of a podcast.
Yes.
This is our live cast. And we're going to talk about what it's like to work with an editor and what the different types of editing are. So I guess basic intro, and then Dawn's going to explain because we're going to go down the levels. So the most comprehensive kind of deep story type of edit is the stuff that Dawn does. So I'll let you start. Okay.
Okay. So I start with, if you have a completed manuscript, I start with a developmental edit. So I'm looking for the plot, story structure, character voice, pacing is a big thing. All of those info dumps and backstory places where things could be streamlined and move your story along. That's what I focus on.
So big picture, total story, like
yes,
plot arc, character arc, all that good stuff.
And things like, does the dialogue match the character? If you have a 21-year-old girl, she's not going to say, well, oh my word.
Right.
That kind of thing. Does your dialogue match your character? Are your character's actions in line with how you've set them up so far? So in what their motive, I know new authors hear this all the time. Well, all authors hear this all the time. Their goal and their motivation of why did they do that? And
the conflict in the story.
And what conflict does it lead to?
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I focus on.
And so if somebody thinks that they need that kind of help, what does that look like? Do they just send you the manuscript, you read it and give them all the answers?
Oh, yes, that's exactly. It's so easy like that. No, I was teasing. We always do a 10-page sample. And I know we're going to talk about the sample a little bit later, but it's really important to get a feel of the story before we dive into editing it. Now, if it's an author that I've worked with before and we have a relationship, which is something you should have with your editors, and we're going to talk about that too, then I don't necessarily need the sample because they know me, I know them, we know where things are going. But usually there's a sample, I send back the sample because I am an over-commenter, and I'm very aware of this about myself, but I would rather give you more feedback than miss something. Right. So I give tons and tons of comments, long editorial letters, lots of information, and some of that can be overwhelming. So I send the sample, tell the author to take some time to process it. They can ask me any questions they want. And then whenever they're like, yes, this is the kind of feedback I want, let's move forward. Then we talk about some expectations and more how exactly are we going to get this done? What's the timeline look like?
Right.
And then if I get in the middle of an edit, or sometimes even from the sample pages, since I also offer story coaching, there's times that after the sample pages, or even sometimes once you get past those first 10 pages, sometimes those first 10 pages have been polished a lot, and you get 50 pages in and you realize, okay, you're not ready for this. Let's back up. Let's talk about story coaching. Let's talk about some brainstorming of where this story needs to go. And we go from there.
What kinds of things flag you like at that 50-page point to say, oh, wait a minute, we've got to back up?
Couple of things. If I don't know where we're going yet, I can't see the conflict. I can't see what the problem is, especially in a romance. If we're 50 pages in and I'm like, dude, sit down and have a conversation. What is y'all's problem? Act like adults.
Right.
Then I need to see your story moving. I need to have some idea. Now, I don't want to know the end of 50 pages, of course, but I need to have some idea of, okay, so this is going to be the conflict, and this is how we're going to tackle it, and this is why it's a problem.
Right. Like, here's what both characters want. Here's why they can't have it. And here's the story.
Well, and I should have some feeling for your characters that far in.
Right.
I should be interested in them and invested in them that far in. And if we're 50 pages in and I'm still like, I don't have any idea what this person is like, even imaginary person is like, then there's a issue there, because your character is not going to be able to carry the whole book.
Right.
If we're not invested in them by that point, you're not going to be able to carry the story all the way through.
Okay. And so if you put the brakes on and you go back to the author, and I wanted to point out too, you don't just send a manuscript with a whole bunch of comments. You also send a letter, right? If you do go through a full developmental edit, the author gets back a couple pages explaining.
My letters tend to be long because I over-explain myself. But yes, anywhere from about 3 pages is small for me on an editorial letter. That's usually authors that I've worked with a lot. They know exactly what I'm saying. I don't feel like I have to ever explain it. Sometimes I've sent out letters that are 10 to 15 pages long because there's major issues, and I like to offer strategies and suggestions. Yeah. So I don't like to just say, okay, here's the problem. I don't think your character would act this way, so everything else from here on doesn't work. I would say, I don't think your character would act this way, so you could go this way, or this way, or you can go back up here and change what happened up here to your character so that it makes sense and carries all the way through.
And the thing I have found helpful, because Dawn does my developmental edits, is that we usually have a phone call. And so we walk through all of the issues that you find. And it's so helpful when you'll like bring up, if it's a big conflict issue, which is always my issue, you have a suggestion. You don't just say, well, you've got a big problem and then go on about your business. You usually say, but you know what, if you had him say this here, then it would make sense that he doesn't want to do this here. Or, Dawn is good at offering the way out, because sometimes when you're so close to your work, and you've been in it so long, when somebody flags a problem, you're just like, oh God, like I have no idea what to do about that. So she offers both, hey, this is a problem, and B, here's the solution, which I find super helpful as a writer.
I hate offering any kind of critique or feedback or anything without being able to say, but here's how I think you can fix it.
Yeah.
And I'm not attached to my ideas of how I can fix it. if an author's like, well, that doesn't really fit my vision of the story, I'm like, okay, well, how about this way, or maybe this way, or we could do this.
Right.
Which is also something that's important in an editor, because it's your story, it's not mine. So if the advice you're seeing or the feedback you're seeing isn't resonating, then it's important that you move it in the direction you want it to go.
So how does story coaching differ?
Story coaching is a collaborative effort. Developmental edit, the author hands me their entire manuscript when they're done. I start at the beginning. I usually read it twice. I usually read it once at a computer that's not in my office. I usually sit in the living room or something like I would a regular book, and read it all the way through just like I would as a reader. And I make notes. And then I move to my desk in my office, and I go through and I make all my comments, and I fill out my letter, and I look at it with a very editorial eye. The difference with story coaching, and story coaching is very much tailored to each individual author. So the difference with story coaching is there are times I have started story coaching with an author who literally said, okay, so there's a girl and her name is this, and there is a guy and his name is this. Let's go.
That's a lot to work out.
And I want it to be a romantic suspense. Okay. And so we brainstormed and we worked our way all the way through it. And we talked about different options and what happens if they do this. And, oh, that doesn't feel right. Okay, well, what happens if they do that? The revision side of story coaching, when I have authors who come to me with a completed manuscript, is we talk about, okay, where do you think it fell apart? Or do you think it fell apart? Because a lot of times I get completed manuscripts from authors who are like, okay, I know there's something wrong. Show me where to fix it. But they don't want all of the feedback piled on them at the one time.
Right.
They don't want to get all the way through. They want me to be able to say, okay, it went wrong in chapter 4. So rewrite chapter 4. I read that. And then, okay, so now chapters 5 through 7, you've got to change this. But chapter 8's still fine because we're still getting there. And so it's more of a working together. I give feedback as they're correcting things. We do
back and forth.
It's very back and forth. I call them check-in chats, but we do a chat at different intervals, depending on the author, depending on their process.
Right.
We do a chat of, okay, where are you stuck? What can I help you? How do you feel about this? And story coaching works very well for authors who are not bothered by people reading things as they are writing it.
Right.
Some authors absolutely do not want to show it to anybody, and I totally respect that. They don't want to show it to anybody until it's completely done. Those are the ones that want to hand me the entire thing and just say, okay, make all the comments you want, and I will process them.
But those are the ones, unless they're experienced authors, those are the ones that we want to caution a little bit, right? Because you should not be the first person to read any author's book.
Yes. I should not.
Shouldn't be.
No. You definitely want to have a beta reader, at least one who has read it. And I do have some authors who will say, especially brand new authors, who will say, I'm not telling anybody in my life I'm doing this until I know I'm good at it.
Right. So scary.
And
I understand that though, because I
understand that. And we have options for that. We have the first look, which is a developmental edit for the first 20,000 words. We have a manuscript review. So we have options for that. But if you'll have at least one other person read it, and preferably not somebody who sleeps in your bed or somebody you have to sit across the table from at Thanksgiving.
Or your best friend.
Or your best friend.
That is afraid to hurt your feelings. Not that that's what Dawn is going to do, but somebody who can be objective should look at it before Dawn does.
And if you don't have anybody like that, that's fine. Have your best friend read it, because they should, if they are a reader, be able to catch some of the stuff that I would catch.
You know what? I don't know if it still exists, but when I first started writing, there was a site called Scribophile, I think. I'll find a link and post it in the comments. But you could sign up. It's basically just a critique back and forth. You can join groups and stuff, but mostly you post your work in not a full novel, but in pieces, and people give you feedback. So it's scary because you don't know who these people are, and some people don't like what you wrote. And but it's a great place to learn to toughen your skin a bit, and also to get some pretty valid feedback.
Well, and some of the stuff that other people will catch that would save me having to catch it is things like if the hero's eye color changes, if they drove up in a truck and leave in a Jeep that nobody changed cars.
You do catch that stuff, but that falls more into a line edit and copy edit camp. Your stuff is more structural, right?
Right.
Like,
Right. And so when you have somebody read it, you should ask some questions like, and I come from a teaching background, and so my goal is to not ask yes or no questions because you want more information than that. But ask some questions like, what did you like about the character? What did you dislike about the characters? What part of the plot confused you?
right.
And what part of the plot did you think was done really well? Those kind of things to get more of an answer. Because if you say, oh, did you like it? They're going to be like, yes, absolutely. I loved it. It's amazing. You wrote a book. And
Right.
it is amazing. But you need more specific feedback than that.
Definitely. Okay. And then once you have taken a look, done all of your big structural magic, usually the author will have some big revisions to do. And then hopefully they've booked a line edit, or
Yes.
at the very least, a copy edit. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what the difference is, because there's always a lot of confusion on that side. But a line edit is, in a lot of ways, it's really similar to what Dawn does, but it's on a much more, not microscopic, but on a more focused level. I look at each paragraph, each sentence, for the same types of things: characterization, storytelling, actual language, though, too. Is this, when someone's speaking, are these words that this character should be using? Also, like, if they're from the South, then they probably speak a certain way. If they're from another country, they might speak a certain way, that kind of stuff. But also, I try to break sentences down if they're run-on sentences. I highlight words that get used a whole lot. If there's echoes from one sentence to another, that's something that I'll find and help with. There are often like unnatural sequences, like somebody was doing something, suddenly they're doing something else, and you have no idea how this happened. Or I made myself some notes, so that's why I keep looking over here. Sometimes when you're writing, you think you're making sense, like your character will say something and it makes perfect sense to you what they mean, and then you just go on. But when the reader reads it, it suddenly doesn't convey anything. So I'll sometimes drop comments like, why is he saying this here? What difference does this make? So it's a more focused look at your language, your structure of sentences and paragraphs and scenes, a little more narrowed in, I guess. And then a lot of times people will come and say, I need a line edit or a copy edit, because in our minds, often we think that's the same thing. It isn't. And what I found out because we use the term proofread a lot. And in my head, that means fix typos and spelling and that kind of stuff. So proofreading actually was really important when most people were publishing in book form, because what a proofreader did was take the printed book and compare it to the original manuscript and make sure that no pages were omitted when it was printed. Make sure there's no orphans, where there's just one word on a line. Make sure that there's not a page break where just one line got printed on a page. It's really more about the actual format of the book. That is what proofreaders used to do. Now we use that word a lot to refer to what's actually a copy edit, which is that little nitty gritty stuff, the spelling, the punctuation. Those are also the people that will keep you out of legal trouble. So if you have used song lyrics, but you don't have permission to use those song lyrics, that's the person that's going to flag that. If you don't know whether you italicize a television show or put it in quotes, that's the person who has memorized the Chicago Manual of Style and will fix that for you. So
and it's so good people like that exist.
I know. I'm like half like that. I do an okay job with that stuff. It's not my bread and butter. I'm the line editor. Like, I love language and I like making it flow better. I like the story part of it. But we do have proofreaders who, we call them proofreaders, but who basically do the copy edit and really get into the nitty gritty. And so that is the difference. Isn't that interesting though, about the books, the physical books?
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. That is really interesting.
Thank you. You had to say that because I asked you.
No, I would have like, no. But no, it really is interesting. And it's interesting how that has changed over time.
Well, it's kind of like the 2 spaces after a period thing too.
Yes.
Almost the same reason, because when we used typewriters, all the spaces were exactly the same. So you would put 2 spaces after a period or 2 spaces after a colon. But now in all of our word programs, no matter what you're using, it's smart enough to see that you ended a sentence and it puts a little bit bigger space than it does between words automatically. So no more two spaces.
So you're free from the two spaces rule.
Yeah. So there's that. And then Evident Ink in general is huge on the 10-page sample. Before we'll take on a new client, we always ask for a 10-page sample, which I realized when someone came to me with a short story the other day that I basically edited his entire story for free because it was only 8 pages.
So maybe with short stories, we need to rethink that sample policy.
Yeah. But for a novel in general, even if it's only 50,000 words, a 10-page sample is enough to. Generally, they come in through our email, which comes into my inbox. So I usually give them a look over first. And sometimes people will come and say, I want a developmental edit, in which case it goes straight to Dawn. But a lot of times people don't know what they want, and because they're not sure about all the stuff we just talked about. And so I'll look over the 10-page sample, and it's a way for me to kind of see, okay, does this person need a line edit? How strong is this story? Is it flowing well? I mean, are they in a dream on the first page? Because we need to work on that. Are they waking up? Are they late for work? Do they physically crash into another person? These are all things that...
And then describe themselves while looking in the mirror.
Oh my God, yes. So all of those types of things, I'll be like, okay, we'll see where it goes from here. But usually those are flags that tell me that they could use some story work. But a lot of times it's pretty obvious to us, only because we've looked at so many manuscripts, I guess, at this point, where it's going to go, whether it needs a line edit or it needs a developmental edit. So often I'll push things off to Dawn to do the sample edit. If I do it, then I turn on track changes. I throw comments out in the margins. And we try to turn them around in 48 hours or so, if we can, and to give you an idea what this relationship will be like. So if you work with Nancy as your line editor, here's what you can expect based on these first 10 pages. And from there, it's a relationship that you have to build with your editor, right? So not every client is a great fit for me or for you.
Well, and it's important that you honor that relationship as far as it has to fit both ways. And you're handing over something you've worked very hard on and poured your heart into. And so you have to trust and want the feedback from the person that it's coming from. And if you get into that situation and you realize, for example, that's why whenever I do the sample pages, I do it exactly like I'll do a developmental edit. So that way you can see, this is my style. This is the way I approach things. If that doesn't work for you, that is absolutely fine. You need to know that going in.
Right.
And there's no shame, hard feelings, any of that of saying, okay, no, this doesn't work for me. Let me go check out this instead. Well, that's absolutely fine.
I think people should approach a couple editors at the same time, give them the same sample, and then decide which one seems like the right fit for them, because everyone's got a different style. And the way I do things is not for everyone. So I think that's super important. But once we return the edit, if the client decides that they want to go ahead and engage us, I think it's important to point out that we are often booked 3 or 4 months in advance.
Yes.
So you have to schedule.
Yes. Right now, just to give y'all an idea, we're recording this in March. Right now, I am booking for September.
And I'm still booking for August, but yeah, it's crazy.
So yes, and people there, you do have cancellations, you have people who push things. So sometimes there's some wiggle room in there, but don't count on that wiggle room.
Yeah. Plan ahead, and book something. Even if you think you won't, maybe if you think you're not going to be ready, book it anyway. We do take a deposit of $50, which is just enough to make you feel like you've got some skin in the game, I think. But if you have to slide, usually if someone's already on my schedule and they have to slide, I can be a little more flexible than if I have a brand new client. I'm not going to try to wedge them into a space where I'm afraid it's not going to work. So plan ahead. And I think the other thing that's really important to say when you're looking for an editor, expect that it will be fairly expensive. And if it's your first book, there could be some sticker shock if this isn't a process that you've done a couple of times. So I think, though, if you find somebody who's willing to do it at a really bargain basement price, just absolutely check their credentials and make sure that there's a reason why they are qualified.
Well, and don't be afraid to ask for recommendations, references.
Yeah.
Go to the website, look at the books that they've worked on, look at the authors they've worked with, send them an email and say, I would be interested in knowing 3 authors that you've worked with, and if I could contact them, because I know I have a list of authors that I already have approval from them of, if you need a reference, use me. So that way you have some kind of idea. One, what is their specialty? If you are looking for an editor to edit, say, romance, and you go to their website and all the books they have listed are horror and sci-fi, that might not be the best fit for you.
Right.
So look for, what do they work with? Who do they work with? And then, like you said, what do they have to show that they know what they're doing, basically.
Exactly. So since it is a big chunk of money, you just want to make sure you're giving it to the right person and that what you get back is going to be something that's going to work with your publishing process. And I think that's pretty much what we wanted to cover today. Yeah?
I think so. I'm looking on my notes here.
What are we going to talk about next time, Dawn?
Next time, we are talking about what makes a great story. And we're going to talk about some of our favorite books and why those books are great stories.
Cool. Okay. I'm excited about that one. All right. Well, I guess we'll sign off here. It's been about 30 minutes. That seems about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to listen to us drone on much longer than that.
But you are welcome to email us with questions or put questions in the comment on the Facebook group, and we will be happy to answer those for you.
I was just going to say that. Yep. Okay. Please don't hesitate to get in touch. All right. Happy writing, happy editing. I'll see you again soon. Where's my mouse? There it is. Okay. Bye.
Bye.